My great pleasure and honor to introduce our Victoria County Judge, Zeller.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is really fantastic to see such an amazing crowd here today. As introduced, I am Ben Zeller, Victoria County Judge, and it's a real privilege for me to have some time to visit with you all today. I'm always very eager to talk about the issues facing our county, what we're working on, what we're working through, and certainly what's going on in our community, so I really appreciate the chance to be able to do that. What I plan to do today is talk to you a little bit about county government in general, for those who may not be as familiar with how we work and why we do what we do. Secondly, I want to talk to you specifically about the 2019 budget that I rolled out earlier this week. And then third, I want to touch on some issues that we've been working through lately. A lot of them we've seen in the headlines, mostly all good news, but also some challenges that we're facing as well. Along the way, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. I'm happy to take questions along the way, as well as save some time at the end to answer your questions. My goal is to make our time together as informative and as worthwhile a use of your time as possible. So Texas counties. Texas counties have been around as long as Texas has been around. When Texas won its independence in 1836, the 23 local governments that existed under Mexican rule became the first 23 counties in Texas, Victoria County being one of those 23. By 1845, when Texas became a state, there were 36 counties, and that number has grown to the 254 we have today, which by far is more counties than any other state in the entire country. One of the primary reasons counties were formed back in the 1830s is incidentally one of the primary focuses we still have today in our modern and high-tech world, and that is to provide a system of law and order. And you see that today in the percentage of our budget that law and order or public safety accounts for. You certainly see it as one of our primary focuses. The sheriff's office, the entire court system, including the criminal district attorney's office, all of your justice of the peace offices, our juvenile detention center, our juvenile probation department, the county jail. Those are all services provided by your county government that fulfills that duty we have of ensuring public safety and law and order. There's often a misconception about counties that we have the same authority as cities do, which is not at all the case. We're far more limited in the scope of what we can do. Cities can, by and large, enact ordinances and laws as they see fit, as long as it doesn't conflict with any state or federal law. Counties, on the other hand, can only do those things that we're specifically mandated to do or authorized to do in the Constitution or in the statutes. Cities are created by the Constitution, by the Charter, counties by the state Constitution. One of the most unique features of county government in Texas is that it's the only level of government that's full-time, paid, professional level of government, meaning those of us who you elect and put in a county office are the ones actually overseeing the day-to-day operations of that office. Every other level of government, from the state legislature in Austin to your local school board, your city council, your water board, those are all part-time positions. So if done correctly, I think that our system is a definite and beneficial feature rather than a bug of the system. It works well. The state constitution grants every county elected official exclusive authority over their operations and staff. If you want to think of county government as a business, it's not one big business with a lot of departments. It's more like a couple dozen individual businesses all working together to serve the same customers. And I encounter this all the time. I get phone calls. I know Commissioner Ives does as well. I see him over here, where someone from the public will call and say, you need to tell your sheriff to do this, or you need to tell that constable that, or the DA. I'm always happy to relay those messages, but those folks don't answer to us. Every county official answers solely to the voters that elect them. By our structure and design, we run really lean. In Victoria County, for example, we don't have a budget department. We don't have a purchasing department. We don't have a public information office. All those duties are duties that fall on the individual office holders. Most of them on me as county judge. One of the many hats that I wear as county judge is as the chief budget officer for the county. Every year it's my responsibility to prepare and propose to Commissioners Court an annual budget that meets the needs of all of our offices and departments. Commissioners Court then has the ultimate authority to approve a budget and to fulfill those needs. I, of course, do that working closely with all of our offices and departments, looking at their needs, their plans, their goals, their challenges. On Monday of this week, I rolled out my 2019 proposed budget for Victoria County, and I think that it is, once again, a budget that our community and that our taxpayers and that our county officials can be very pleased with. It's a budget that meets all of our needs and does not raise taxes. In fact, by not adjusting our tax rate upward to compensate for loss in values due to Hurricane Harvey, it equates to about a $750,000 tax reduction. Now, one of the important things to note is that in spite of those lower property tax collections, we're able to do many things, many of which we haven't been able to do in years prior. I want to point out some of those highlights, but first I want to tell you a little bit about our budget. No State of the County update would be complete without some talk of the budget, what we're doing with your tax dollars. Our total overall budget, depending on what year it is, and it's somewhat of still a work in process, but it's total budget of about $59 million. The bucket of money within that $59 million that gets the most attention is our general fund. That's about $39 million. The reason that gets the most focus is because that's our primary operating account, and that's where your property tax dollars and your sales tax dollars go. So $39 million general fund, overall about $57 million. The difference between the two is several additional funds that have specific purposes. Some quick examples are our enterprise funds, those activities that we treat as a business activity, the airport being one, our Patty Dotson Health Center facility, that real estate, that's another one. Other funds would be our debt service fund, our health insurance fund, we're self-insured, have several million dollars there. But overall, that's the budget. And some highlights that we accomplished with that budget, again, was to maintain the current 39.59 cent tax rate, which is about 3% below our effective rate, equating to about a $750,000 reduction in taxes. At the same time, we had lower revenues from that. We also took a big hit in revenues at our county jail. Over the years, we've come to depend on about well over $1 million in revenue at our jail due to federal inmates and revenue we get from the federal government. That's declined significantly, so we took a big hit there. But we overcame those losses and accomplished some significant things, one of which was to offer a 3% across the board stipend for all of our county folks. Secondly, and maybe even more importantly, is for another year, we were able to maintain our employee insurance premiums at the same level with no increases. We haven't increased employee insurance premiums since 2011, which is really an unheard of achievement. We're self-insured and are able to do a good job controlling our costs. Our employees are the beneficiaries of that, along with our taxpayers who aren't having to bear that additional burden. Additionally, we were able and will be able to fund law enforcement, the sheriff's office in particular, at historic levels. Over $16 million directly to the sheriff's office. That represents about an $830,000 increase year over year. And it goes back to that primary purpose of law and order in our community. Our court puts a great emphasis on that, and we're proud of what we've been able to do with and for our law enforcement folks in the 2019 budget. Now, I don't want to spend all our time on the budget, but I know the question always comes up at this point: how'd you do it? Less tax revenue from property tax, a hit in revenue at the jail. Where'd the money come from? Well, primarily it came from three places, due to three things. Number one, a very proactive budgeting effort over the past 24 months. In the middle of 2017, when we were still on a sales tax revenue decline, we budgeted those revenues significantly downward, anticipating that downward trend to hold, or at least preparing for that downward trend to be with us a while. So we budgeted downward, lived within that smaller budget, and of course, things turned out much better. Sales tax is back on the upswing, and we were able to put well over $1 million into the budget due to that improved sales tax performance. Some other areas that we were able to see some significant progress on is at our juvenile detention facility. You will probably most all remember our effort a few years ago where Commissioners Court undertook a review of our detention facility with the goal of ensuring that we are much closer to breaking even on those services we provide to outside communities. Of course, you never make money on your own juveniles who get in trouble, but when we house everybody else's kids from the far reaches of the state at our facility, we need to not lose money on that. Every year since we began that effort, we've seen great progress towards our goal. And in the 2019 budget, we were able to budget an additional $450,000 due to our efforts working with the good folks out at our juvenile detention facility. There are many other areas where we saved money, where we were able to generate more money. One of them is on interest earnings. And I credit our treasurer for being on top of our deposit contracts. We're budgeting $500,000 in interest revenue. But those are just some examples of the many things that we've done to provide this budget. I know it's common political talk to talk about going line by line through the budget. Well, we've done that and actually do that frequently, and the proof is in the pudding. We've seen significant results based on that, and again, I think overall it is a budget that meets our needs and that respects those who pay the bills, and it also does a lot that last year we weren't able to do. We received our audit, our outside audit for our 2017 performance a couple weeks ago, and in that audit, I wrote it down because it stuck out to me. The auditor noted, quote, our consistent conservative fiscal practices. Based on his review, he didn't think there's any reason that we couldn't maintain our AA+ bond rating. And part of that rationale was him noting our very limited debt levels and also our healthy reserve fund that we've set aside for unexpected things that come up. I know I've covered a lot of ground with regard to the budget, so before I move on to some specific issues, I want to ask what questions might you have about the budget or anything I've mentioned thus far.
Done well.
I heard.
You've done well.
Well, thank you. What What other questions might you have? Okay. I like talking about budgets and numbers. Not everybody may be in the same boat, so I respect that. I will move on. Some specific issues that have come up, at least been in the headlines, are capital projects. In the past few years, we've been able to undertake many projects that up until now have been pushed to the back burner that we haven't been able to do. Notably is our courtroom expansion. 4 or 5 years ago, there was an estimate to renovate the old fire station, to provide another courtroom at an expense of about $2.5 million. Due to some good teamwork, a lot of thanks to our treasurer for volunteering his office space, we were able to and are in the middle of developing a new courtroom in our existing courthouse, in our existing space for, I don't want to throw out a number and then be wrong, but a tiny fraction of that original estimate doing the fire station. Hundreds of thousands of dollars rather than millions of dollars, which is a big accomplishment to now have that additional court space. That's been a request from our county court of law and district judges for the past decade. That need is being met this year due to some creativity and teamwork. Other capital projects, the fire station, we are going to be renovating that, but for a different purpose. We're going to be doing a renovation and improvements to that, allowing the sheriff to occupy that space. Some other things we're doing are historic officers club out at the airport. That's being completely renovated and restored, preserving that historic treasure we have out there. We're also looking at what can be done with the old, it goes by different names, the old Woodhouse headquarters, the old hotel across from the jail downtown. One of the oldest, probably the oldest wooden structure in Victoria County. We're looking at possibilities to renovate that. So a lot going on, a lot of course, hurricane repairs going on, but also those projects that had been on the back burner that we're now able to accomplish. Speaking of the Officers Club out at the airport, there's been talk, of course, about us getting our new airline out at the airport, and that will be happening. I know it's certainly the preference of the Airport Commission and us to have Silver Airways, and we've made that recommendation to the feds. However, that's not a done deal. It's either going to be Silver Airways or Boutique Airlines. Regardless of which one is chosen, as of November 1, we're going to have an airline out at the airport that you can book through the major travel sites, and that once booked through the major travel sites, you're not going to have to recheck your bags when you get to your next airport destination. So regardless of which one it is going to be a significant step forward for our airport, for our community. The question now that's solely in the hands of the DOT is which one it's going to be. We're lobbying for Silver, but it could be Boutique. Either one's going to be a big improvement. The hospital, of course, is always one of our focuses. I know a lot of the news there has been well documented in the media. Really, the reason I've got a lot of focus on the hospital these days is because what an amazing asset that is to our community. The challenges that I see with our hospital are mostly big picture, macro, environmental issues, the healthcare industry in general, Medicare, Medicaid reimbursement rates. Hospitals like ours, by and large, are looking for ways to subsidize losses. All across the state, hospitals generally in our situation are finding ways to subsidize what they've seen as inevitable losses. I know that I'm not content with being a statistic, our court's not content with being a statistic, which is why this is so important to us. And in the new budget laid out by our hospital administrator, I see Mike Olson back in the back, When that budget is achieved, that's going to be a big step in the right direction. But of course, we've got a lot of ground to cover, a lot of lost ground to make up. Again, that hospital has not only been a fantastic healthcare provider, but also an amazing employer, and has not been a burden to our taxpayers. We'll view success as maintaining that track record going forward. Certainly sustainability is essential, and that needs to be our goal. We've seen also some success related to grants that we've achieved. The ones that have been in the headlines lately are, of course, our Hogg Foundation mental health grant, $410,000 to do a lot of good work in that arena here in Victoria. Another big one, not necessarily a grant per se, but some revenue sharing we've got our hands on from the feds, is the GOMESA funds, where we expect to receive several $100,000 for the next several decades for use of hazard mitigation, emergency preparedness. Another big issue among many that we'll be facing is when the legislature convenes in January. Those of you who hear me talk about what we as counties and local governments, schools, cities, face in the realm of unfunded mandates. I know in theory everybody's opposed to unfunded mandates. What I try to do is put some dollars on that so you know exactly how it affects us. In Victoria County alone, about half of that general fund that I mentioned is directly spent on unfunded mandates, which is a lot of money. Depending on how big the budget is, it fluctuates, but well over $15 million a year direct impact to the county. That's not counting for school districts, city, other entities. They're a big deal that cost you a ton of money, and it's been one of my goals to address that. Through our county associations, we fought incredibly hard last year, working with the legislature, trying to pass a constitutional amendment ending unfunded mandates. We fought hard. Unfortunately, Randy, you know about this, we did not succeed. As it turns out, spending money you don't have and then getting to blame someone else for it after the fact is a power that lots of politicians in Austin are very reluctant to give up. I commend Representative Morrison for voting in the House. The House voted overwhelmingly to ban unfunded mandates and put that as a vote before the people, supported by Representative Morrison. Unfortunately, the Senate put the kibosh on it, and we are back to the drawing board in January. But that's a big deal. Number one, it's huge dollars, but just as much and just as important, it's an issue of accountability and transparency. At every level of government, accountability and transparency reduce costs. And unfunded mandates are the antithesis of both of those things. If I can send Randy my credit card bill every month,
that's going to happen.
Why on earth would I try to reduce my costs? And then I get to point fingers at him and blame him for trying to pawn some of the tools in his garage to pay the bill. And yet we have kind of the same situation with the legislature, and it just goes back to an issue of accountability and transparency. Unfunded mandates are very, very dangerous. The fixes the legislature tried to come up with, SB 2 and the other variations, it was a lot of political stagecraft, nothing but finger pointing and nothing that would have addressed the actual issue. What fixes the issue is a constitutional amendment banning unfunded mandates, where we actually have to come up as a state with the money we need to pay our bills. Unlike the federal government, Texas can't print money. We have to find money to pay for the things we need, and the state's required to pass a balanced budget. But unfunded mandates enable the legislature to sidestep those beneficial provisions and do great mischief to the taxpayers of this state. And local property taxpayers are the ones who bear that burden. So that will continue to be a big focus of mine and a big priority. Going forward, I intend to continue working closely with our county associations in addressing that issue and other issues that affect our residents and our taxpayers. Looking forward, and I know Randy's looking at his watch, so I'll take a couple more minutes. Looking down the road, we've got things we're going to be trying to accomplish, an expansion to our Veterans Service Office. We have, I think, a chance to secure some federal funding to expand what we provide to our entire Crossroads area. We're going to be actively pursuing that. Economic development remains one of our primary focuses. There's talk about why young folks leave our community. Great discussion that I'm glad to be seeing happen. As I see it, really one of the big issues there is high-paying jobs. When we're able to expand the jobs we have to offer, that's a big step in keeping our young people here. Pursuing grants, we have a good track record of getting our hands on grants that we're eligible for. We're going to continue that aggressively, especially since there's a lot of dollars out there in the realm of hurricane recovery. Anything we're eligible for, we'll continue to actively pursue. And just in general, being good at what we do, taking our county to the next level, providing as great a service as we can will be a primary goal. I've got time for a few questions before Randy runs me off. What questions might you have about anything I've mentioned or anything that I haven't mentioned that might be on your mind?
How is the mitigation for hurricane damage going? Where are y'all at?
Well, we still have several $1 million of insurance and FEMA money we're waiting on. Aside from that fact, the recovery rebuild process is going well. A lot of these buildings we've been able to begin working on immediately. Going forward, we're going to be actively pursuing the CDBG Community Development Block Grant funding, which we know there are several $1 million that we're eligible for. Those dollars for us will go into infrastructure projects, repairing roads and bridges that were impacted, as well as improving those structures for future hurricanes. We anticipate being able to secure several million additional dollars for that effort. So all in all, it's going well as a hurricane cleanup recovery can go. Yes, sir.
Judge, speaking of the hurricane recovery effort, and this came up in one of our Tuesday morning meetings weeks ago, but I was really shocked to hear that there are tens of millions of dollars still tied up in FEMA related to hurricane caused deaths.
And
how we have tens of millions of dollars still tied up with FEMA related to Hurricane Harvey. Why is that, and why can those funds not be attained to repair the damage that we've received in this area and wherever else?
Yeah. The sad part is I'm not surprised to see that. FEMA, by and large, is a train wreck when it comes to paying claims. I know coming on board as county judge, I was told that was going to, if you ever get in that situation, that's a years and years long process. I don't want to explain it as simply it being part of the federal government that's inefficient, ineffective, but I think that's a lot to do with it. Although I'm not surprised by the time frame on that. We've been treated much, much better by our insurance as far as getting paid, but FEMA, I wouldn't say this time frame is unusual. In fact, I expect it to take quite a while longer, unfortunately. All right, Randy's about to come up here. One more question. Yes, sir, Brent.
There's a rumor afoot, Judge, that you personally were involved in the destruction of the historic hangar.
Okay, well then.
Were you operating a sledgehammer without a hard hat? And
I heard that rumor yesterday for the first time, and I thought it was funny, but the person was serious. The historic hangar out at the airport, the demolition of that was voted on by the Airport Commission back in April. Those minutes came to Commissioners Court in another public meeting and were approved. I don't have the ability to make those decisions. Like I told the court, I would accept that ability if you gave it to me, but that wasn't my decision. It was made in an open meeting by the Airport Commission, ratified by Commissioners Court. And I don't disagree with the decision. That facility would have taken over $2 million to refurbish. With our dollars, we're able to steer those towards other historic buildings, including the Officers Club, including our historic fire station, including quite possibly the old hotel / old Woodhouse headquarters, possibly even the old jail. So in terms of historically significant buildings, I think we've made far more progress refurbishing and restoring our county assets in the past 24 months than really any time prior, aside from the renovation of the 1892 courthouse. So, yeah, I heard that too yesterday. I wasn't going to bring it up unless somebody did. You know, one big part of my job is trying to determine what merits a response and what doesn't. I mean, you hear all the chatter, social media, all the talk. My inclination is to disregard it in most cases unless somebody contacts me directly. Yeah, but yesterday was the first time someone mentioned that, and like I say, if someone wants to give me the power to build buildings and sign $1 million contracts unilaterally, I'll take it, but I don't have that ability and didn't make that decision. All right, Randy's given me my last warning, so I will leave you folks. I really appreciate, again, the chance to be here today. It is my overwhelming honor to serve each and every one of you as county judge. That's a responsibility that I take seriously. Any feedback or suggestions or questions about rumors anyone may ever have, call my office. Happy to visit with you anytime. Thank you all once again.